in a tutorial. So it's basically Informatica Big Data Management or Informatica BDM, which we'll be looking into. So I'll be going through the basics, what you'll need to understand, and I'll also show you how you can start off with Informatica BDM, what are the tools you should download and install, and how you can establish the minimum connections to start off with it. Okay, so now before moving on with this session, guys, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you get more of this content. If you're watching this through a webinar, you can also check out our YouTube channel once the webinar is done. If you are watching it through our YouTube channel, just if you like the video or if you like our previous videos, just give a subscription, and also you can leave a like if you like the video, and just click on the notification icon if you want to get notified, because we upload videos every single day, and also we do lives every single day. Okay, so right now let's start off with the session by looking at the agenda. We'll start off with introduction to Informatica developer. So there is something called Power Center, and whoever is moving on to Informatica Big Data Management should know that it is a tool which was around since when Informatica got developed first. So it's available since 2000, and developer was another tool which came later. And right now developer's main purpose is in aiding to connect with Hadoop and big data management. So that's why we are going to discuss about it. Next, we'll be looking into the big data management architecture, which makes it possible for Informatica developer and the other tools and the other services within Informatica to successfully connect to Hadoop and do big data processes. Then we look at the big data process, which was actually provided in the official documentation of Informatica. And once we see that, finally I'll just take you to the developer tool. I'll show you what exactly is available over there, and also I'll be showing you the administrator tool, the main tool, and I'll be showing you how to establish connection between them. And once that is done, I'll just give you a brief about what you can download and where you can go and download them, and that's it. So that would be the end of this session. So let's start off with it. First we'll look at the introduction to Informatica developer. So Informatica developer is used to develop data quality plans and maps. So the basic purpose of Informatica developer is to create data quality plans, that is getting data from a particular source or a particular input, and you're using various transformations and various functions to make the data available, and that data which is available should be you should be able to analyze it. It should be transformed enough that that data is enough to analyze what you're going to do further. So it also basically extends functionality of the Power Center platform by providing an SDK with a set of APIs. So you can just do this with Power Center, but why developer? In the sense it makes it pretty easy to connect with the Hadoop platform. You can choose the execution engine. For example, you can run it on native Informatica engine, or you can run it on an Hadoop engine. For example, in Hive, or you can run in Tez or Blaze. So there are multiple engines, and that basically makes it better than Power Center in the case of big data management. So why do you need Informatica developer? First of all, it replaces traditional Informatica data quality. So traditionally it is data governance, data modeling in Power Center. So Informatica developer's main purpose is data quality, and data quality is not a single let's say a single part or a single service. It basically comprises of multiple services to provide you data quality that we'll see later in this session. First, it helps you create and understand basic mappings, basic objects, and export procedures. So basic mappings in the sense you will have to create a mapping from, it starts from a source, then that source is given as an input into a particular mapping. So that mapping will produce an output, and that output can be given as an input to another mapping. So it goes on and on. So you can create a complete mapping with this. Also the basic objects are and export procedures. These include the table which you're including, the basic objects. For example, if it is an employee table, so inside that you have salary, so that is a basic object. So it basically involves all of the components of a source file, and it is to basically create and understand basic mappings in Informatica developer. It helps you to observe the load process and analyze the results for knowing success ratio. So for example, as I told you, there are separate execution engines in Informatica developer which is not available in Power Center. So that is one of the important things you will have to know. As there are separate execution engines, you can run the results or you can run the mapping on various execution engines and understand the load process, and then you can basically analyze the results for knowing the success ratio and also to know how long it takes in each execution engine and choose the perfect execution engine for your project. Also meet out the connectivity requirements to get data from different sources. You can get data from Hadoop, you can get data from a relational database, you can get it from a NoSQL database, you can get it from a social media platform, you can just get it from a CSV or a flat file. So you have so many different options in developer. Now let's look at the features. First of all, it's open-ended system, which basically means the input or the source does not need to be just available in the same server or the PC. You can get data from external sources as well. Next comes a metadata repository. So you have a metadata repository or a metadata manager in developer or the Informatica BDM tool. So why will you need that? You can store all the metadata in one single location, and whenever your mapping or your plan requires the metadata, it can take from that single folder which is connected across multiple servers. Universal connectivity to data sources. You can connect Hadoop. As I told you, you can connect multiple data sources. That's the answer to this. Flexibility, again, you can create any number of mappings. You can take one output, give it as an input to another mapping. You can connect any data sources. You can make your destination anything you want. So there is no issues in that. Supports various platforms. So you might ask, how is this different from open-ended system? So open-ended system means it allows sources from anywhere. So supports various platforms in the sense you can connect Hadoop from various third-party tools. You can connect it from Cloudera, you can connect it from Amazon EMR, you can even connect it from your local PC, but it takes a lot of work. So you can connect it from various online platforms directly to Informatica, which makes it even easier. Let's say you have your Cloudera Hadoop set up already and you're going to introduce Informatica in your company. So it's pretty simple. You can just directly connect your Cloudera Hadoop system with your Informatica BDM tool, and that is more than enough. You can start off with your data quality mapping process. Then it comes job monitoring and recovery. And in the administrator tool, you have a monitoring tab. So the number of jobs which is running, what are the jobs which got completed, where is an error in the job, and how long does it take. So everything can be monitored, and if there is an issue, if there is some data loss, you can also recover from that particular tab by looking at the logs in a single location. So these are the features of Informatica Developer and Informatica BDM tool as a whole. Now, what are the tasks which we need BDM for? Because we already had Power Center, but what exactly do we need BDM for? So using big data management, when you want to access, analyze, prepare, transform and stream data faster than traditional data processing environments. As I told you, there are separate execution engines. If you want to make or if you want to analyze or process or stream data faster than your traditional data processing environments, even it can be Power Center, but to do it faster, you need separate execution engines to run your jobs, and Informatica BDM exactly gives that to you. So first, read from and write to diverse big data sources and targets. As told, you can get data from any source, you can write it to any destination. Perform data duplication on a Hadoop cluster. You can get the data from a Hadoop cluster. You don't need to run the quality plan or the quality mapping directly on the available flat file in an HDFS cluster or anything like that. You can just duplicate it or you can just replicate it, and you can run the analysis on that data. And then perform data discovery. So data discovery is basically a process of collecting data from various databases. It can be a relational database, a NoSQL database, it can be let's say an Hadoop cluster as well, and you will have to consolidate it into one single viable source so that you can perform the tasks or analyze the data even easily. So that basically is data discovery, and you can use BDM to do that. You can perform data discovery, you can get data sources, you can get your data from multiple sources and club them or consolidate them together. Next comes perform data lineage on big data sources. So basically lineage, to put it simply, it basically means to identify where your data is coming from. So now data lineage basically includes where your data is originated. So the first point of your data generation, what happens to it and where it moves over time. So let's say you are getting the data from a particular database. So now according to your BDM tool, the data is originated from that database. So now you are transforming it, you are doing all kinds of things to the data, you're analyzing it, processing it, you're doing everything. But now at one stage there is an issue and you want to check where the data came from. So now normally you will not be able to do that. That is a very hard process to track back and look at where this particular data came from. But in the BDM, Informatica BDM, everything is tracked. So in this case you can exactly find where this data originated from and trace back the errors and resolve it from the root cause itself. Okay, so next comes stream machine data, and it basically means you can stream the data created by the activity of computer. So basically your logs, you can stream your logs, or if you're connected to an IoT system, you can stream the data you are getting from that IoT system, or telemetry data, whatever it is, you can directly stream machine data. Manage big data relationships, yeah, it's pretty much like a relationship manager as well. In databases you create your models, right? You create entity and relationship models. Like that you can create a big data relationship in the BDM tool and you can manage it in that single designer tool itself. Okay, so now we've seen this. Now let's look at the major look of how a BDM service looks like. So this is the complete BDM 10.x services. That basically means right now there is 10.4 available, but I have installed 10.2 in my PC. Okay, so this is the basic Informatica Big Data Management diagram. Let's first start off with this. There is the administrator console which you log in, and you would have already created your integration service, data integration service. So once all that is done, you have your Informatica service platform, which lets you connect with the data integration service or integration services. So now coming to data integration service, it has multiple services within it. It has the profile service, mapping service, and SQL service, and that is connected to the repository, model repository service, analyst service. So now analyst service is connected to obviously Informatica Analyst, the model repository and SQL service, or the complete data integration service is connected to Informatica Developer. Now coming to the right side, you can see there is an integration service, there is a repository service, and it is connected to a repository. And there is a metadata manager service, which is basically the central metadata manager, and the service is connected to the metadata manager. The integration service is connected to the mapping designer and the workflow manager. So we'll look at about these services and about these tools. So these are the tools, these are the services, and the administrator console. So we'll look at them in detail later in the session. Now let's move on. Okay, now Informatica Big Data Management. At the top you can see secure, govern, then connect, ingest, parse, extract, profile, process, and perform, and you get the Informatica Big Data Management tools in between. Then there are the at the bottom, the orange color, there are the execution engines. You have MapReduce, Tez, Blaze, Informatica Native Engine, Database Pushdown, and under Hadoop Pushdown you have MapReduce, Tez, and Blaze. And you have the solution. Then you have polyglot computing. So polyglot computing is basically different algorithms or different ways to compute your Informatica data, that is different ways to analyze it, and capabilities. Okay, so this is again a simple Informatica Big Data Management diagram which just shows the outline of how it looks. You have the Big Data Management tools, which are these in between, and you have all these things which are directly connected to these management tools. You can connect data sources, you can ingest data, you can parse it, extract it, profile it, process it, perform various transformations on it. So it basically means it includes this, and while you're doing this, where you can run them, you can run on different engines, and these are the different engines which are available. Okay, now let's look at the big data process. Once we look at the big data process, we can look into the big data management architecture. Starting off with collect the data, cleanse the data, transform the data, monitor jobs, and process the data. So to create a big data project, you collect data from different data sources, you perform profiling, cleansing and matching for the data. So first step, you get the data. Second step, you cleanse the data by removing unwanted columns, by eliminating null values and doing all that. And then you build business logic for data and push the transform data to the data warehouse. Then you can perform business intelligence on the view of the data. So once you transform the data using Informatica BDM, you can monitor the jobs which are running currently using the monitoring tab in the administrator tool. Once all of that is done, you can just send out the data, and you can use the data to create visualizations in a BI tool like Tableau or Power BI. Now, first step is collect the data. You get to collect data from various different data sources. So these are some of the data sources which I'm showing over here. Transactional data from a relational database, log data which is basically mission data, flat files which is a CSV or a text or Excel file, something like that, then sensor device data, getting direct data from an IoT device. So these are the various types of data which can get collected, and this data is collected and given to the Informatica BDM tool. Once the data is collected, we perform data profiling to view missing values and descriptive statistics to identify outliers, that is the data which is not in contradiction with the existing data, and removing all of those anomalies from the data and only having the perfect data which can be analyzed and given to the nearest estimate which you are making. Transform the data, you use business logic or transformations, basically default transformations available in the BDM tool, and use that to transform data. You eliminate the need for hand coding the transformation logic because Informatica already has pre-built transformations which you can just use, which you will have to know which particular transformation to use when, and once you know that and once you transform data, next you can process the data. So based on your business logic which you have chosen, you process your data. You can determine the optimal runtime environment to process your data. If your data is less than 10 terabytes, you can run it in your, or you can process it in your native environment. If your data is greater than 10 terabytes, you will have to consider, or you will have to process it on Hadoop environment, because Hadoop basically is better when it is large amounts of data. If you are trying to analyze 2 GB of data, that basically is a waste on Hadoop's processing capabilities. If there's a lot of data, go ahead with the Hadoop environment. If the data is very less, go with the native environment which is provided by Informatica themselves. And then monitor the data. So this basically means you monitor the status of processing jobs which are currently running, and you check whether the job is complete or if there is any failure or an error, and you can view the monitoring statistics of how long a particular processing job is taking, and according to that you can change the environment's configuration and all that. Also, once the processing job completes, you can connect the data, or you can get the data to a business intelligence tool and start your visualization. Okay, so we've seen all that, guys. So this is the big data process which is provided in the official Informatica documentation. So now let's start off with the architecture. So there are 3 main architectures in big data management: the component architecture, the connectivity architecture, and the Hadoop ecosystem architecture. So let's just start off with the component architecture. So you have the clients and tools at the top, application services, then repositories and third-party applications. So you can just ignore the third-party applications right now. We'll come to that later. So first at the top, we have metadata manager, Informatica developer, Informatica analyst, and Informatica administrator. So the Informatica administrator, I think you know what it is. It monitors the status of the profile, the mapping which are running, the big data relationship management jobs which are running. So all of that can be monitored on the monitoring tab in the administrator tool, and you can also increase the number of nodes. You can manage the complete Informatica BDM architecture just from that one tool. Then the Informatica analyst, you can create and run profiles on big data sources and create mapping specifications to collaborate on projects and define business logic that populates a big data target with data. So you can basically create and run profiles on big data sources. So whichever source you're getting from, let's say from one Hadoop cluster, you're getting some data, you can create a profile on that and you can start analyzing it. So you can create a mapping which basically collaborates on projects and the business logic which you define using various transformations and what it does on the data. An Informatica developer, you can again create and run profiles on big data sources and run mappings and workflows on the Hadoop cluster. So using analyst, you can basically run profiles on big data sources, but using developer, you can do that. You can also run mappings and workflows on the Hadoop cluster which is connected. So you can see that's why it shows there is a connection to Hadoop cluster. Okay, so you've seen that. So metadata manager is basically a tool where you can manage all the metadata which gets stored or which gets released from the Informatica developer, analyst and Informatica administrator tool. Next comes the application services. First, over here you can see there is a service, analyst service. So let's look at the analyst service. So the analyst service runs the analyst tool in the Informatica domain. So any tool requires a service, needs a service to connect them to the Informatica administrator tool so that it can connect with the repository and work on it. So now the analyst service manages the connections between service components and the users that have access to the the analyst tool. So whenever you're trying to access the analyst tool, it basically checks whether you have access to it and then lets you use it. Next comes the data integration service. So the data integration service can process mappings in the native environment, or it can push the mapping which you create into an Hadoop environment or inside an Hadoop cluster which is available in the Hadoop environment. Basically, data integration service job is to process the mappings which you create. It can process it in the native environment or the Hadoop cluster, and that is according to the information which you provide. The data integration service also retrieves metadata from the model repository when you run the Informatica developer tool mapping or workflow. The analyst tool and developer tool, they connect to the data integration service basically to run their profile jobs and store profile results in the profiling warehouse over here. So you can run, so Informatica developer and analyst, I told you they can both run profiles, create and run profiles, and data integration service is the one which lets them run those profiles, and once it is run, the results are stored in the profiling warehouse. Next comes the metadata manager service. And the metadata manager service basically manages the metadata manager repository, which connects the repository to the metadata manager tool. So it's a service which connects the metadata manager tool and the metadata manager repository. So whenever you run a mapping or mapping specification, profile or a workflow, it establishes the connection, and whenever there is metadata, it stores it on it. Okay. Next comes the model repository service, which is one of the important repositories available over here. So model repository service is really important. So the model repository service manages the model repository. So this is the service, manages the model repository. The model repository service connects to the model repository. Obviously, when you run mapping, a profile or a workflow, you specify a model repository service when you configure the DIS. So when you are configuring the data integration service while installing the Informatica BDM tool, you set up a model repository which gets used after that. So now I missed one point in metadata manager service. So the metadata manager service connects obviously to the metadata manager repository, where you can perform data lineage analysis. So as I told you, all the metadata is stored in the metadata manager repository. In that case, whenever you want to track back and check for errors in a particular data mapping, the place you go is metadata manager. And what you do, you go to the metadata manager repository by using the metadata manager service, and then you can check out the data available and you can run a data lineage analysis over there. Now coming to the last part, there is metadata manager, repository, profiling warehouse and model repository. So the model repository, it stores the profiles that you create, it stores the data domains which gets created. For example, while you're creating the Informatica BDM tool, a data profile or a data domain gets created which you will have to use to connect your administrator tool to the model repository, and then you can also use it for mapping and workflows. Then comes the metadata manager repository. It basically reads metadata from the repository. So the metadata manager service reads the metadata from the metadata manager repository when you perform data lineage analysis on the existing metadata. And profiling warehouse is basically the data integration service runs profiles and stores those results in the profiling warehouse. So this I already told you. Okay, so we've seen this. Over here I just mentioned the 3 tools at the top, nothing else. Now coming to the second architecture, which is the connectivity architecture. So again, this is one of the important architectures available. Over here you can see these are the various types of data which are available, the source, and here you have the data integration service. So we know that this is the complete tools, and we do not know how the data integration service connects with the Hadoop cluster, because no other service or no other tool connects with Hadoop. Only the data integration service connects with Hadoop. So how does it connect? It connects using Power Exchange adapters. Okay, so that's what we're going to look into this particular diagram. So what exactly the data integration service does is it uses these Power Exchange adapters to connect with the big data sources and targets. So the target is the Hadoop cluster. The sources can be various sources which are available, or it can be a flat file from the Hadoop cluster itself. Also, the data integration service pushes down the job processing to the Hadoop cluster. So whenever there is a new job which has to be processed, the DIS will push it into the Hadoop cluster for processing. All the other services, the analyst service, the metadata manager service, the model repository service, so all of these services are connected to the data integration service, and the data integration service connects to the Hadoop cluster. So they don't have direct access, but they can access the Hadoop cluster via data integration service using the Power Exchange adapters. So Power Exchange adapters are nothing but just connectivity portals. You can have Power Exchange adapters for various sources. Over here you have a Power Exchange adapter which connects to the Hadoop cluster. You can connect to Hive separately. You can connect to Tez or Blaze or whichever execution engine which you want to connect separately. Next comes the Hadoop ecosystem architecture. Okay, so now we've seen this, how it connects with the Hadoop cluster. Over here, this is inside the Hadoop ecosystem. Okay, over here you can see data integration service is connected to the Hadoop cluster. So inside the Hadoop cluster, you have various engines. One engine is Hive, one engine is Blaze, and there is a separate engine which is the Informatica native engine. It does not come under Informatica Hadoop cluster. So the Hive engine, whenever the DIS is trying to use the Hive engine, it has 2 other engines available. It has Tez and MapReduce. So Tez engine and MapReduce engine can be chosen, and they can run the profiling or they can run the mapping on these engines. Also Blaze is basically connected to the Informatica cluster. So Blaze is a specific Informatica engine which is available, and you can run your mappings on the Blaze engine as well. And yeah, so this is basically the Hadoop ecosystem architecture. They didn't show all the Hadoop ecosystem services, because anyway whatever you're going to run, we're going to run on the engines, and that is the only things which are shown over here. Okay, now we've come to the last part, which is the Informatica developer tool part. Over here you can see this is how the developer tools looks like. I'm going to take you over there and I'll show you how it works. So before that, let me take you to the Informatica administrator tool. So this is the administrator tool which I already installed and which is ready to go. So administrator is my username, and I've given password. Okay, so it's logging in. Let me just close this. So it's a little slow on my PC because I have just 8 GB of RAM. It obviously takes a lot of RAM, the administrator tool. Okay, so let this get let this open. Let me take you to the developer tool. So this is how the developer tool looks. You can just close of these. Okay, so right now I don't have any mappings. I don't have anything available right now. Over here you can see I only have the model repository available. So first thing you'll have to do is connect to the model repository which got created. So how you can create the model repository is you can create the model repository in the administrator tool, or you can get the model repository while creating or while installing the Informatica BDM client and server. Okay, so right now I may right click over here and click on connect. So again you can see it was showing that not responding, so let me just provide my password, and now you can see it's showing connecting to the repository, and it's trying to connect or contact the domain, that is our administrator tool. And right now you can see the administrator tool is also loading up, and it's just trying to connect to the domain. And once it connects to the domain, we'll be able to see the folders which got created over here. Okay, so it got connected, and you can see it's connected to administrator, that is our administrator tool. And over here I just created a sample project. There is nothing over here because I'm not yet connected to Hadoop. And once you connect it and once you have a mapping, you will be able to see all the engines over here, that is Hive, Tez. You'll be able to see all the Hadoop engines and the native engine. You can choose the engine and run the mapping in the developer tool. Now going to the administrator tool, you can see we are in domain right now. We can go to service and nodes, and I can show you all the services which are available. Obviously it's taking a lot of time for me to load. It's not the internet. If you have a better performing or a high spec system, it will obviously show it to you faster. Okay, so right now you can see this is my domain which I connected to the developer tool, and over here you can see there are the system services, and here is the data integration service which basically connects with the Hadoop cluster once you have established connection. This is integration service, this is the repository service, and this is the model repository which again got connected in the developer tool. So now going to connections. Okay, now you can see there is cluster configurations. Okay, so right now you can just right click on them, click on new, and you can see there is a connection option and a cluster configuration. Over here you can see if I click on new, there is a connection option as well. For example, let me click on new and go to cluster configuration. It's the same again. You can just click on this and go to cluster configuration, or directly go over there. It's just taking some time. Okay, so right now I've clicked on a new connection. Let's say, so you can see there is a Salesforce option, there's a Hadoop option, there's an Amazon Redshift option. These are basically data warehouses. Sorry, this is cluster configuration. Let me just close this. Yeah, so these are the first two are warehouses. Azure data warehouse. Then there is DB2, DB2 for i5 OS, DB2 for ZOS, which is mainframe operating system. Then there is Hive, JDBC, ODBC, SQL Server. So, again, I clicked on it once again, that's why. Then there is Tableau, Microsoft Dynamics, Amazon S3. So these are file systems. You can connect to the Hadoop file system, HDFS. You can connect to Amazon Kinesis or other messaging platforms like Kafka, NoSQL databases like HBase, and also you can connect to social media like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, or even Twitter streaming. Or you can also connect to a website using OData. So for example, let me just click on, let's say I want to connect it to Amazon S3. Click OK. So now what you'll have to do is you'll have to provide a name, ID for this particular connection, and once that is done, so as this is AWS, you'll have to provide your access key, secret access key, select the region in which you're going to connect it, the folder path from the AWS bucket, so the bucket name, the bucket ID, the folder path, access key, secret access key. Yeah, this is not required, I think. And master symmetry key. If you have any encryption enabled in your S3 bucket, you can just provide it here, and then you can test connection with your AWS S3 bucket, and then you can finish it. and that's it. You will be connected, this particular administrator tool will be connected to the S3 bucket, and let's say if you have some data sets or flat files over there, you can directly analyze on them using the developer tool. You don't need to import it to the developer tool because your developer tool is already connected with the administrator tool, and the administrator tool manages all the connections. I think I've given you a pretty basic idea of how you can start off with it. So first I would suggest you to start off downloading and installing it. So you can get administrator, you can get these tools from edelivery.oracle.com. so you'll have to just sign in and get Informatica. So once you sign in, you'll be given the option to choose these services. So right now I don't want to sign in. So once you sign in, you will be given an option to search. You can just search for Informatica and you will get the first option, in which you'll have to click, select it, and go to the download page where you'll get multiple options of multiple versions of Informatica. Choose the 10.2 version, and there will be only two options. You'll have to select both of them for Informatica 10.2 and unselect all the other versions, and once you do that, you'll have to download them to your PC. So once they are downloaded over here, you will get two zip files. So these are the two zip files, which it will look like this. So you'll have to extract them. Once extracted, you will get the installers, and for example, for client, go inside client and you will get an installer. You'll have to install the client, and you have server, install the server, and that's it. You would have installed both client and server over here, and it will be up and running for you. Also, download SQL developer. So you don't need to install SQL developer, actually it's just downloading it. Once you download SQL developer, the application will already be available. Okay, so that's it. Then yeah, so you just have to do this to get started. Then you can start off with the actual process of learning Informatica. This is just the installation process, and that is the end of my part for this session. Now my colleague will be joining you. If you have any questions regarding your career or certifications, you can ask them and they'll be answering and clearing your doubts. If you have any other further questions or doubts, you can call us at this number, and like for example, if you have career questions or certification questions, you can call us at these numbers, or you can put a mail to sales@intellipaat.com, not support, sorry, it's sales@intellipaat.com, or you can just open intellipaat.com and you can check out the bottom right corner where we have a chat box. You can start chatting with it and providing your details of what exactly do you need, what courses do you need, and we will be able to help you out. So I think my part is done. My colleague will be joining now, so start putting down your certification related questions and they'll be able to answer all of them. So thank you guys, meet you in another session.